You probably want an explanation regarding the title. Now there is one, but probably not the one you're expecting. Because 8 had only one TV adventure, that makes it hard to do a top 5 list. However, there are also many stories that the 8th Doctor has had on audio with Big Finish. But on the other hand, I've not listened to many of those stories, only a few. So I'm not going to do a top 5 list. I'm going to give you a summary and thoughts on the 8th Doctor stories I've either watched or listened to so far. And I'm not going to rank them, as I feel I've not listened to enough to justify a top 5 list. I'm instead going to go in the order that they were released. So with that all out of the way, let's start on the history. The 8th Doctor was played by Paul McGann and made his first and only TV appearance in 1996, being the most short-lived Doctor out of all the incarnations. 8 was definitely the most human incarnation we had so far of the Doctor, and even controversially suggested the idea that the Doctor was half human.
On my mother's side.
This idea definitely pissed off a lot of fans, and like my relationship with the rest of the fandom, I found this controversial idea fairly interesting, even if it did take away the alien aspect of the Doctor. He was also the first Doctor to kiss his companion Grace on screen in the TV movie, which drove the fans further into meltdown. Oh boy, if they only knew what was to come. 8's conception on TV was a long and complicated process, with many failed attempts to relaunch Doctor Who into the 1990s. There was originally going to be a 30th anniversary direct-to-video movie called Lost in the Dark Dimension, which would have involved an alternate reality where the 4th Doctor never regenerated, and we'd have had all the surviving Doctors, Doctors 3, 5, 6 and 7, Tom Baker would have been the star, and Graham Harper would have directed it. It looked to be a brilliant celebration. Sadly, the project was shelved, and what fans got instead was Dimensions in Time. How bad was it? Well, I consider this anniversary special the Star Wars holiday special of Doctor Who, and if you know what I'm talking about, you'll know how bad this story is. There were other attempts to bring Doctor Who back, even with the help of Steven Spielberg, which didn't really amount to much. Attempts in the early 90s to bring Doctor Who back with Dalek creator Terry Nation and Cybermen creator Jerry Davies, which again didn't get off the ground. If you want more info of Doctor Who in the 90s, check out the 7-year Hitch documentary on the TV movie special edition DVD, as well as the Wilderness Years documentary. Now let's discuss 8's stories. This was Doctor Who's only TV adventure in the 90s, and involved the 7th Doctor taking the remains of the Master back to Gallifrey after being executed by the Daleks. The Master's snotty remains escape, and the Doctor is shot by Chinese gangs and subsequently regenerates into his 8th incarnation, while the Master takes over the body of an ambulance driver. But the Master plans to steal the Doctor's body to live again, using a black hole, the Eye of Harmony. For me, the TV movie is the definition of a mixed bag. With every positive aspect, there's a negative aspect. Paul McGann is fantastic as the 8th Doctor, as he gets to be heroic, childish, but also the reassuring hero who you can rely on to save the day. However, on the other hand, I'm not a fan on how the 7th Doctor went out. This incarnation of the Doctor played chess with evil, committed genocide, fought gods through time and was a master manipulator, and died getting shot because he couldn't be bothered to check the scanner on the TARDIS. Lame. Furthermore, starting the story with a regeneration, in my idea, was a bad move. It's nice they want to connect it to the classic series, but if you're trying to get a new audience in, this will just confuse them, and I think 2005 had the better relaunch with Rose. This story also gave us the worst incarnation of the Master, played by Eric Roberts, hamming and camping it up.
I always dress for the occasion.
However, the production values are also great, with the TARDIS looking incredibly gorgeous in this, and I hope the 13th Doctor has one of a similar look. It also semi-frequently makes no sense, such as, why is the Eye of Harmony the black hole that powers Gallifrey in the TARDIS? What's a temporal orbit and how can it bring people back to life? These are left unanswered, but I will say that the TV movie is a fairly decent starting point for classic Who, as it has elements similar to the new series, such as an insane master, a huge console room, and the Doctor kissing his companions. But if you want to check the 8th Doctor on TV, then watch this one and see what you think. This is one of the 3 Big Finish stories I'll be discussing here, and for those of you who have no idea what Big Finish is, allow me to elaborate. When Doctor Who was off the air in the late 90s, someone had a brilliant idea: get all the surviving Doctors and have them record new adventures on audio CDs. The idea worked very well, and Big Finish is still going even to this day, nearly 20 years later. In 2001, they managed to convince Paul McGann to return as the Doctor, and also obtain the rights for use of the 8th Doctor, and one of his first stories was Sword of Orion. This story involves the human race locked in combat with the android horde in the Orion system. The 8th Doctor and companion Charlie arrive light years away from the front line aboard a derelict space liner, hoping to be away from the war, but face execution, whilst the Cybermen receive a signal for reactivation. The best way to describe Sword of Orion is basic. It's not particularly bad, but it's nothing that special either. The story is very similar to previous cyber stories, for example the huge spaceship being reminiscent of Earthshock, as well as the androids, the Cybermen in hibernation, a la Tomb of the Cybermen, and even a mention of their adopted home planet Telos. While these familiar elements make it clear that this is the Cybermen, that's also the story's weakness too, as it's a very been there, done that type of adventure. It's rather cliched in areas, but there's also some decent world building when discussing the Orion War that does add some depth to the story. But while it's not the best, I can say that it's an entertaining listen, for maybe one time, and it's nice for A to face the Cybermen, but I've heard that there's better cyber stories out there. Take it for what it's worth and listen for yourself. If I had to pick a favourite story so far from the 8th Doctor, I would pick this one, as it has everything I love about Doctor Who. The story involves Christmas Eve in 1906, and something is lurking in the shadows, which kills the servants in an old Edwardian mansion in the most brutal way possible. With time running out, the 8th Doctor and Charlie must play detective to murders with no motives, where time may be the killer itself. The Chimes of Midnight has elements of Doctor Who that I just adore. Time travel, horror, a spooky atmosphere that just makes this so memorable. The supporting cast are all very memorable as well. The butler, the cook, the maid and the driver. They're very odd people when you first hear them, and they're mostly ignorant to the events around them, but the dialogue is so good that you buy it. And as the story goes on, the horror and tension increase, and it becomes ever more disturbing to listen to, but in a good way. Rob Sherman, who wrote Dalek in Series 1, wrote this, and listening to this and Jubilee, a 6th Doctor audio story, makes me wonder why he hasn't written more for Doctor Who, as his track record is truly impressive. I can't recommend this story enough. Go to the Big Finish website and download it now. You won't regret it. Plus, you'll never look at plum pudding the same way again. This story is in many ways a sequel to the 7th Doctor TV adventure, Remembrance of the Daleks, so I'd recommend watching that story first before listening to Terra Firma. The 8th Doctor encounters Davros years after destroying Skaro to find his humanity and organic self is fading, and being the Dalek Emperor is now slowly but surely becoming just like his creations, the Daleks. What works best about Terra Firma is the conversations and dialogue between the Doctor and Davros, as this is probably the most insane, yet most vulnerable we've ever seen Davros. He's able to be cold, calculating, and psychologically tortures the Doctor, and given that it's the Eighth Doctor, makes it all the more interesting. The Eighth Doctor is more human, but he also has darker qualities, and combining these elements together makes for a very dark but also interesting take on the Doctor, and Megan is just brilliant. If you're a fan of the Series 9 opener, The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar, you'd love these scenes and this story. If I have criticism, is that it's not the best Dalek story ever, as they're mostly confined to the background, and Charlie with new companion Chris, their subplot is not that interesting, as we're not truly shown or told what Earth is like after being conquered by the Daleks. However, with those weaker elements aside, this is still a very good listen and battle between the Doctor and one of his oldest and deadliest enemies. We end this list with a return to TV for the Eighth Doctor, or internet, and we finally see 8's long-awaited regeneration. The Doctor in his 8th incarnation is trying to avoid fighting in the last Great Time War while trying to save a pilot named Cass. He is killed by the impact of the spaceship, but given the elixir of life by the Sisterhood of Khan to change him into a warrior. This is only a 6-minute long episode, but even then it manages to pack in so much good in such a short space of time. It shows the Doctor not wanting to be a part of the war, the reputations the Time Lords have in the universe, name drops the Doctor's companions from Big Finish, making it more or less canon now, and most importantly, gives 8 his regeneration. If I have complaints, it's that I really wanted to see more of this story, as 6 minutes was way too short. It could have been a 45-minute episode as far as I'm concerned. But other than that, I really love Night of the Doctor for what it is. It filled in a gap of Doctor Who's history and whetted our appetites for the upcoming 50th anniversary. Well everyone, those are my thoughts on the 8th Doctor so far. Be sure to like and subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and let me know in the comments what your favourite 8th Doctor stories are, and if there's any from Big Finish that you can recommend. I'll have a look, and I'll see you all next time, and it is going to be fantastic.